Let's talk about governance. The most fundamental relationship in governance is the principal-agent relationship. The principal is the owner, or in this case, it's the representatives of the owner, which is society in general, the state, for example. These are what trustees at a public or private institution are there for. They are representatives of a larger constituency that can't be there. The agent is your university leadership, particularly your president. So you have this relationship, and all bureaucratic organizations have these relationships, whether it's corporate or nonprofit. Everything has a principal and has an agent. And the idea is that these ownership, the principal, is separated from the agent. The agent runs the business. The owner doesn't. So the idea is that the owner, or the representative of the owners, are a step away from the organization. They have hired someone to take on that role, so they don't have to. They can do other things. This is the benefit of being an owner, where you can own lots of things and not have to worry so much about running lots of things. And if you're talking about society in general, all the members of society have different roles to play, not necessarily running that organization. So it's this principal-agent relationship. That's the guiding star of trusteeship. Everything else you do as a trustee revolves around that relationship. So the agent is running the organization. They have to have flexibility to run that in a way that is effective and efficient. However, they also have to do it in a way that is in the best interest of the principal. And any deviation from that is a problem. And that is ultimately what the trustee's job is, as a principal, to provide that oversight. How do you ensure that the agent is acting in your best interest? Now, it's easy to see this problem when you look at, say, a corporate environment, where you might have a CEO who is paying themselves an exorbitant amount of money for the job that they're doing. So the outcomes are not commensurate to what that agent is contributing, but that agent is working for essentially for themselves. They have they're self-interested instead of taking the owner's interest to heart. So that's the big challenge right here that we have. This this connection, making sure that everybody is on the same page. That is ultimately the job of the trustee. How do you make sure that agent is doing so? You're in the room. You're in the power position as a trustee. But the rest of society, your constituents, cannot be in that room, and so you have to represent them in analyzing the agent's performance and seeing if it actually is in line with what your expectations are. Now, there can be discrepancies in information. Actions can be hidden, information can be hidden. There can be an asymmetric access to information, where the agent might know things intentionally or unintentionally that they're keeping away from the owners, the trustees, the principal. So one of the first things that trustees have to do is be on guard for these hidden actions, this hidden information, this asymmetric information. They need to find ways to level up the playing field. And one way of doing this is to have independent access to information. You can do this in a number of ways. Perhaps the most important way is to talk to people. Talk to the people involved in that organization directly without the agent's presence. Students, faculty, staff, community members, alumni, anyone in the broader organization you need to talk to, or have somebody assigned to talk to, or a committee to talk to. Keep this is part of the work. The work of a board happens somewhat in the meeting, in the boardroom, but it also happens walking around talking. You should be really skeptical and cynical, in fact, of any agent, any executive, any president who wants to corral you and keep you away from constituents, particularly in circumstances where they aren't there. Obviously, the president can exert an enormous amount of subtle pressure on constituents by their mere presence. Nobody wants to make them mad or do something that might get themselves in trouble. There might be retribution. And I say words like retribution. This can be a very hostile environment between a principal and agent, but also it can be very cooperative. And in most cases, it is very cooperative. These are how good organizations work. However, you can also inadvertently, a leader can inadvertently overstep and try to become a guardian of information because they think that's in the best interest, or they think somebody won't explain something correctly. I think you have to trust your people. A leader has to trust their people, and trustees have to go out there to actually find those people without that filter. I know at one point where I worked, the board function, the board's professional of the trustees, myself in that case, reported directly to the board. And that's a very unusual kind of circumstance, but it is very, very valuable. It's one way to having another way of getting information about the organization. They can do that in a number of different ways, bringing in consultants, having faculty advisors that you can bring in and mine for information. The idea is just to be collecting information about your agent as the principal that you can independently verify what's going on. So watch out for that red flag of being prohibited from having those conversations. Reach out, make those conversations happen, and it'll give you a better perspective about this principal-agent challenge and problem. I don't want to make this sound negative. In almost all cases, there is an alignment and certainly an intention to be aligned. What really gets difficult is when there's general malfeasance, and that is obviously a huge, huge problem. But you'll probably have a number of indicators that that's a problem. But more likely, it's just going to be a concern. And so having these conversations with your agent, with your president about the kind of communications that you would like, the gatekeeping that you would like to have eliminated as far as obtaining information, the timeliness of information, all those kinds of things are worthwhile having the conversation. This is a very peculiar relationship, agency, followed by being instructed by the principal. But it is fundamental. It is fundamental to our society, and it is their fundamental relationship. Don't forget, as trustees, you have complete responsibility for everything at your university. You are only assigning responsibilities to your agent, not the other way around.